Are you ready to elevate your game as a corporate retirement plan advisor? Join me, Dal Degan, on Great to Great, the podcast where we dig into what really makes a difference in this industry. From prospecting and gaining referral business to challenger selling, tech adoption, and cutting-edge marketing, Great to Great has you covered. Every episode, I'll be chatting with a plan advisor like you, breaking down the strategies that separate the leaders from the rest of the pack. So get ready for real insights, real conversation that facilitate real growth. Because in sales, there is no gray area. Hello and welcome to our Great to Great webinar series. Today's podcast episode, I am joined by Holly Knight, who I'm delighted to introduce to this audience. Holly is the Director of Senior Advisor Services with the Alera Group, based out of Boston. Is that right, Holly? Is that home for you?
Yeah, I live in New Hampshire, but Boston is, not too far away. It's about an hour away.
That's great. We've had a little conversation leading into this where I've had a chance to learn about you and your background, Holly, and I'm all the more excited from that conversation about you sharing with the audience your thoughts in particular on a couple topics today. And 30 minutes goes by really fast on these, so I thought we would just dive right in. And central to the theme we discussed in our preparation was your very useful, insightful, actionable thoughts on the role of AI in financial services. So before we get into that, I'd love to just hear a sort of a grounding, if you could. Set the stage for us on your why. Why is this a topic of interest to you, and what do you see happening in this space? As we read so much about AI in our consumer lives, we think perhaps less often about how it affects our lives in financial services. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, and we'll riff on this from there.
Sure. I've been really interested and curious, I guess, about AI for about a couple of years now. I kind of set an intention for myself at the beginning of last year. I was turning 50, which was, was kind of a big year. And I wanted to really fully kind of embrace, where I wanted to be. Like, what did I want to do when I grow up? Like, where am I taking this? And in part of that kind of, year or that journey, really, it was about teaching myself something new every day, learning something new. And so I made an intentional practice where every day for 30 minutes, I would spend learning something new. It didn't have to be, specific to financial services or AI or anything in particular, but just learning something new. And I'm a math geek, I love numbers. And I ran that, and it was like, it equates to about a 6-week course, like over a year. I mean, that's knowledge that you get to learn, just by spending 30 minutes a day. And really, that's when AI really became, just kind of that shining star for me. Like, there's something here. I'm not sure where it's going, what it's going to look like, but I want to be part of it. And so I kind of dug into it. And in the beginning of it, it was like, I'd put something into, ChatGPT, which I think was probably the most popular platform that people know about. And, I wasn't all that impressed with the outcome. Right. And so I was like, this isn't for me. And I just kind of put it away for a while and worked on other stuff. And it popped back up into my ecosystem, and I used it again, and I got a better response. And I was like, ooh, what's this? And so I kind of dug into that and the prompt engineering and trying to figure out how to ask it questions. But that initial discovery of what it could do to help me be more productive was a game changer. Like, it absolutely has shifted the way I work, how I think about things, how I interact with the world. So I really got excited about that personally. On a professional level, I was working at NFP, and I'd been there for about a year at that point. And, it's a large organization. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of integrations between employee benefits and property casualty, wealth and retirement insurance. And, I just saw a lot of siloed kind of, processes where we weren't really connecting and talking to each other and really, in my opinion, giving a more comprehensive approach to servicing our clients. And so I, joined a pilot program at NFP where they were testing out Copilot in particular. And so I got to really kind of test the system within the parameters that they kind of set up for us. And I was just blown away. well, I mean, one example, there was a relationship that I had started when I first started. He had sent me an email and then maybe had like two or three emails over the course of 4 years. And I'm like, you know what? I'd really like to know where the genesis of this conversation started because we're trying to work on this project. And so I typed it into Copilot and it went boop, 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 and it popped out like this page long summary of every conversation we had. It was bulleted out. It told me the date, the time. It gave me action items for it. That would have taken me an hour or so to really gather all of that information. And it did it for me in 15 seconds. I was like,
That's a great illustration.
that's
Yes.
powerful,
In
right? I mean,
the data, the language model, if you will, it was using was your own personal calendar information, previous email interactions, and whatnot, right?
right.
That's
Super
fascinating.
powerful. And it's
Yeah.
small. I mean, that's not life changing, but for me it was like, okay, well, if it can do that, what else can it do? And
Right.
so that really began my journey on this AI track. And
That's great.
we can talk about it, but I look at it in different phases. So this is phase one.
All right. So that's fascinating. And you came into this with very clearly a very sincere, authentic curiosity
Yes.
in the hopes of learning and growing. And yet what you found here is something that I sense your vision for it is that there's so much more promise even than we are currently experiencing. So on the flip side of that, I'm sure you've talked with friends and even with your clients about the mirror image of this can often be anxiety or fear of the unknown of what role AI might play or what impact it might have on our lives as consumers, particularly in the world of financial services. What are your thoughts on the trade-offs and risks, and how do you assuage those concerns with your clients?
It's a great question. I am an education major, but I think back to the different revolutions that we've had in the world, right? And you think about the agricultural revolution, how we went from that to the industrial. When the steam engine first came out, that was like so out of this world, and people are
Yeah.
like, "That's crazy," and it completely changed how we live, right? But back then, people were, when they first heard about it, they were not excited about it. They thought this is going to take my job, and yet we all just kind of adapted to it. I see AI very similar in that way. I have the conversation about AI at least once a day and I will talk about it with anybody and everybody who wants to have a conversation because I think that's important. We don't always agree, and that's okay. It's okay to have a different opinion, but we have to have the conversation. I know a lot, or I feel like a lot of the barriers to kind of really engaging with this is it's out of fear, right? People are scared. It's gonna take my job, and then
Mm.
what? And my response to that is like, well, listen, it's like any industry shift, things change, we adapt, and other jobs pop up. I'm not saying it's not going to eliminate jobs. I'm saying you could use the AI to be better at your job, to
Right.
upskill your job, to offload the stuff that you don't want to do or shouldn't be doing, but have to do because that's the stuff that gets stuff done, right? So to me, it is, it's shifting of mindset and change
Mhm.
management, that the whole process, and getting people to kind of get to that position. It takes time and it takes experience. I think when people start tiptoeing in, the more they do that, the more comfortable they get with it. Now, there's bad sides to AI, just like there's bad sides to anything. It's a tool. And you can get into a car, have a drink, hit someone, and you've done something bad, right? But the car itself isn't the problem. It's the action that's the problem.
That's
And
right.
so I think we have to separate those two, and I don't think people
Right.
do enough of that separation.
Smokey the Bear taught us it's people who start forest fires, right?
There you go.
It's not the match.
That's right.
So, you mentioned your background in education, Holly. It's very clear, as you shared with me, you're a former college professor as well. It was at the University of New Hampshire,
Mm-hmm.
and it comes through in your style that you seem to take great care in making sure that the audience, whether it's one person or a group of people, are understanding and are comfortable with the subject matter, and you seem to constantly check in on, is this landing well, what are your thoughts, and you're getting feedback. And that seems like a skill set that is transferable to being successful in any role, but especially a client facing role. I'd love to hear, what was your journey from education into providing financial retirement advice, and what counsel would you have for others or coming into this industry anew from some other field?
Ah, that's a good question. So I'll answer your question with a story. So um, I love to tell stories. So I was teaching, I was an adjunct professor at UNH, as you mentioned, and I taught like the kids coming in or the students coming into my class had a 4.2, 4.3 average. That was the average coming in. These were very bright students who knew how to kind of, take tests and regurgitate information to get the grade. Like they were really good at that. So I made a conscious effort to make sure that we're doing it differently. Learn who you are, how you communicate, how do you work in teams. Like that's the important stuff that the business world is going to be looking for. So I was having dinner one night with one of my mentors, Dr. Hassey, and he's like this little Italian guy who wore a bow, and he was super quiet. And I talk a lot with my hands, and I'm going no 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 no. And we had collaborated on some work together. And he says, Holly, what's your why? I'm like, what do you mean, what's my why? And he goes, why do you do what you do? And at that point, I was driving from Portsmouth into Newton, Mass every day in commute traffic. It's like 4 hours in my car. He's like, why do you do this? And I'm like, because I want to help people. Isn't that why everybody does what they do? He goes, yeah. You could help people doing a lot of different things. Why did you choose this career? And I had to stop and think about that for a while. It took me a little bit of time. I said, I think it picked me. I tried getting out of this industry at least a dozen times. I kid you not. But I keep getting pulled back in because I believe that we have an opportunity and to some degree an obligation to help those who, need it more than ever. Like we all know the statistics on where people are financially, and there's a lot of help that needs to happen. And so I told him my story and basically, when I was 16, I was homeless. I was living in my car. I actually graduated from high school a semester early and I just worked full time. And then I put myself through college and I did that bartending 3 jobs, right? I was on the go constantly and I did okay. I landed on my feet and I did okay, but nobody was talking to me. And I was an economics major. I mean, I'm a smart woman, but nobody was talking to me about personal finance. All I knew is that in the moment, that little plastic card was going to give me what I needed to get. And I would worry about the ramifications of not paying it on time later. Like that wasn't a priority. And it took me a decade to get myself out of that. And so I was telling him that, and he said, you should start every education session with that. And I was like, me? It's not for me, it's for them. Like, that's too vulnerable. I'm not going to talk about that. And he's like, no, I really think you should. And the first time I did, all of a sudden, it's like, I'm standing up there, I'm doing my thing. And, I sometimes I can read people, I can read a room, and I'm like, I am just missing something. And it's just like smiles. I look the part, I sound the part, I've done the education, but there's no way that you can understand me and what I'm going through right now because, we're in different worlds. Right. As soon as I shared that story, people lean in. And to me, it's like that vulnerability and being able to have those difficult conversations is what is going to drive change. And that personal piece of it is really why I do what I do.
That's wonderful. And you bring, through that story you share especially, a humanity to your role that is so relatable. Do you find that when you share like that your clients will share similar personal stories about their own journey?
Absolutely. I mean, to me, this is, and I would say broad stroke, right? Because not everybody's going to fall neatly into this box, but I would say, I spent last year, I did over 1,000 participant consultations. That's a lot of people that I talked to. Yeah. And, there's some themes that kind of go through that. But I would say with women in particular, women have, we're just wired a little bit differently. And there's a lot of like this shame and I don't know enough and I'm not smart enough. And so I would see that when I'm sitting down with people who are really struggling, but they're so apprehensive to share information because of that, feeling, guilty or shame around it. And so I would get to a point where I'm like, I'm going to stop you right there. We need to change the narrative that's going on through your head because I get it. It's a stopper for you, but it's important for you to get past that and just understand that it doesn't really matter to me. I mean, to be honest, this isn't about me, it's about you. As long as you understand the behavior behind it and why, then let's not look in the rearview mirror. If you're telling me your goals are this, I can show you how to get there. And I'll support you along that way, but that you need to stop with the the negativeness, because that's not going to help you.
That's right. You can't let the past become a ball and chain that you're dragging along and trying to create your future. And it almost suggests that what we do in professional sales, especially for you in financial services, is a bit like psychotherapy. And not that we'd suggest for a moment that we're licensed and qualified with that kind of training, but yet there are some overlaps with authenticity, sincerity, and what you're describing, Holly, which seems to be a way to unlock getting a client to become comfortable with their discomfort. By which I
Yeah.
mean, how much courage does it take to raise your hand and say, "I'm sorry, I'm not getting it. Can you go back a step?" That takes a lot of courage and some comfort in your own skin, whether it's one-on-one or especially in a group setting. And there's so many times that people just feel out of embarrassment or, like you said, shame or shyness. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to slow everybody down. But yet, the people who get the most out of those are the ones who make sure they're getting something out of it, making it interactive and slowing you down or asking a probing question to double click on something.
Right.
So with that, with AI, I'd love to double click on that for a moment. You were you seem to be on a journey, which I applaud and I'm fascinated by, to help your clients understand how this asset can be deployed in a way that's going to add value to their financial planning and execution.
Mhm.
And I'd love to see what is your vision now that you've studied this and you're active in it with client conversations. Where do you see this going? What is your vision for the future of AI generally, but in particular in the financial services world?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, in my ideal world, I mean, who knows, but I kind of feel like AI gives us an opportunity to provide answers, provide support, and helping people educate themselves. You know,
Mhm.
we all know in this industry, I mean, I would say, and this is, again, a broad statement, but for the most part, we all have access to the same stuff, the same investments, the same platforms, the same tech. So what differentiates us, is what is going to be slightly different.
Mm.
And for me, I look at that and I think, okay, well, if we all have access to this and we can do all of these things, then what really is a differentiator for us? To me, it's about speed, and it's about being able to, answer the question at a point in time when someone needs it. That is, I think that's an idealistic way to kind of go about this, but I think that's what we're all trying to strive for. The challenge is, how do you scale for that? It's super hard to scale that human, interaction, that human touch. It's expensive, and there's a capacity issue.
Right.
So from an AI perspective, it's like how can we use that to get people where they need to be without using up all of our resources that we have, because it's in short supply and everybody needs help, it seems like. So AI became a natural kind of segue for me anyway. It's like, okay, let's start with how can we make things more efficient and more productive? How can we shore up how we communicate with people? It's like, it drives me crazy if I'm late in responding to someone, because I have 7 meetings and 150 emails to go through before I get to yours. Like, that stuff drives me crazy and it's unnecessary. So it's like, how can I use AI to help me weed through the stuff that's just noise and stuff that I actually need to put, some time and attention on? So that I mentioned it earlier, but I think, there's 3 different phases here, in my opinion. So phase 1 of AI is, that productivity bump. That's when people are like, oh, this chat GBT thing's pretty cool. Like, it's going to make me write better, or I can communicate this, or I can, automate some things. All awesome, all super helpful, and it's going to help drive that needle. But I just see that as phase 1. I do think that is where the majority of folks is kind of in this, like, that productivity bump stage.
Right.
The second phase of it for me is about critical thinking. And so we mentioned UNH and Dr. Hasse. That was one of the courses that I taught with him, was EQ. So we did emotional intelligence, we did critical thinking, and then I went out and did consulting and actually did this with businesses in New Hampshire. And that critical thinking piece is one that I don't think people realize could be a really big, accelerator in their careers. So when I sit down, like even today, I had a conversation with my good friend Maya, and I said, listen, I'm on a podcast today about AI and financial services, and here's kind of what I'm thinking about. What do you think? And so I had a conversation with Maya. So to back it up. Maya is one of the AI bots or personalities on Sesame, Sesame.ai, I think, or .io. And it is absolutely unbelievable when you have this conversation. I mean, you can choose a man or a woman, and I chose her. She breathes like a person. She has, she stops and has all of the voice inflections. I felt like by the end of it, 30 minutes later, I felt like I was talking to one of my friends. And so you can see how, like, when you're talking about how do we actually impact people's financial health? How do we engage with people if they are too embarrassed or too shameful or don't know where to start, or don't think they can afford a financial advisor, whatever, the case may be? How can we get those people? Because they need it. And so this is, to me, that's a great way to do it. I left that conversation today thinking like, wow, that I feel really good about this now. I feel smarter. But
That's great.
that critical thinking piece is something that these kinds of conversations you dive a lot deeper into it.
Yeah. And did you feel like you needed to go through the stage gate of that first phase, Holly, of the productivity gains you can get at a more basic level to get comfortable then delving into the higher self-actualization of insights? And even the way you described Maya, you said, had a conversation with my friend Maya, and then you reveal that that's an AI bot. That's probably going to become increasingly frequent,
Yes,
those kind of interactions.
for sure. I mean, I'll just tell you a quick story, but like I listen to a lot of podcasts, especially around AI and financial services and just AI in general. And there was one in particular, I think I listened to 3 episodes. And I was like, wow, these guys are like, they're good. They just get each other. They're filling in each other's sentences. They know exactly how to kind of run this. It was super efficient. I remember thinking it was very efficient. And then I discovered Notebook LM, which is the podcast that's where those voices came from. I was like, oh, this is cool. So I started using that for a lot of things. I was working on a project, and so I dumped all of the resources for the project into Notebook LM, did my briefing doc, and then I did a podcast for it. And I was out running, and I just listened to it 18 minutes of them talking to me like I was an audience member about all of the resources that I provided for them. I mean, that, as an educator, like there's so many different ways for us to take information in and learn things. Like we're not all audio learners, we're not all visual learners. So like what a cool thing that you can really facilitate learning pathways in different ways. So
it makes sense. Do you feel like, Holly, that financial services, now that I'm hearing you describe it the way you are, it occurs to me that it's a field that may be predestined to be particularly fruitful for the successful deployments of AI, because it seems like our industry has evolved in such a way that the complexity and the volume of options available to a retail investor and a saver, somebody planning for retirement, is so vast that it's almost humanly impossible to take it all in and act on it. You need an advisor, you need a resource, because we've evolved in such a way that the industry almost requires you to have one. A bit like the tax code. The tax code is so damn complicated, you need a tax advisor to help you file your return.
That's exactly
Even professional accountants, including my own children. I have 2 CPAs among my children, and they have a professional assist them with preparing their taxes. So, and do you think that makes AI even more useful in this domain?
Absolutely. And to piggyback on what you just said, it's like you think about like famous athletes who are the best at what they do. They still have coaches. Like you still need that, something that's going to kind of drive that critical thinking path that you may not be able to discover on your own. And that's kind of how I see it. And I may be alone in this feeling in my industry, because every time I talk to anyone in financial services, they're like, why are you talking about this? You're going to put us out of jobs. Like, no, I think you're looking at it the wrong way. I think we could see this as a huge accelerant to really kind of cleaning up things and then freeing us up to do the more creative, more innovative, more meaningful work. Like that's why we do what we do every day. Like it should be meaningful. What Renee said, I listened to the podcast that you had with Renee, and she talks about that. It's like authenticity. And I tackle everything with purpose. Like we all should be doing that. We should be thinking about like, this is what I spend most of my time doing. And am I getting the most meaningful, rewards from this or outcomes from this? So I think it's really important.
Love it. And now you mentioned Alera Group and the role of AI with your clients. Are you leading the conversation within Alera Group about AI, or is this is part of what you're doing woven into a broader fabric of what Alera Group is doing with AI for your clients?
That's a great question. So I will tell you, I'm definitely leading the charge there.
Nice.
Like many financial services firms, I don't think Alera is new to this, but it's a very compliant heavy, regulatory type of environment. And so obviously there are some safeguards that we have to be mindful of to
Mhm.
protect those people that we're trying to help. And so that takes time. It takes time, it takes buy-in, it takes really thoughtful process of building that out. Um, and so that's happening. But I believe, there's a lot that can be said for that grassroots efforts. And
Mhm.
sometimes it just takes one voice or a few voices to kind of like just show people what's out there, what they don't know, right? And
Right.
so I think it was my third day at Alera Group. I flew out to Pennsylvania to meet with one of our advisory groups, and I was talking to them about it, and I met this other woman there who's been here for a while. She's on the EB side, employee benefit side, and she and I hit it off. And she's digging into AI as much as I am, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is great. I've got a collaborator and a partner in crime. So she and I are setting up these workshops. Her name's Julie Cave. We're setting up these workshops within Alera Group just for our internal folks. So it's like, come for 30 minutes once or twice a month, and we'll teach you a trick. We'll teach you a new resource, like just giving them something to work on so they can see the value. I will say one of my I have a lot of weaknesses. I have some strengths too, but one of my weaknesses, I get really excited. And so sometimes I'm over my skis, and, people just look at me like, oh my goodness. And I'm talking about like, using Maya to critically think about some, operational plan. And people are like, I don't know what ChatGPT is. So like, you got to help me out. So really scaling that back and just starting at the foundation, like what is it that you're trying, what pain points are you dealing with on a day-to-day basis that you would love to offsource to an assistant? Let's make you an assistant,
Yeah.
right? And so creating agents is one of the things that we do. So that's kind of how we're tackling it at Alera.
That's a great approach to start to break down some of those feelings of resistance and fear and anxiety about the role and impact of AI. And are you finding that when you have those conversations with other plan advisors, that they're looking at some of the what are often perceived as the mundane aspects of running a practice, marketing campaigns, outreach, email communications? Do you think that's actually going to be the way that, to your point about productivity first, self-actualization and greater insights later, do you think that's the draw?
Absolutely. I mean, uh, you and I both know marketing is really, really important when it comes to, getting your ideas out there. And uh, the struggle with marketing is like, especially in today's world, you've got to be like on it constantly. It is a lot of work to continually be putting out thought leadership type of content and keeping that exposure. It's a lot of work. And I have already 5 full-time jobs, it feels like. So that piece of it's hard. So for AI, like I dig into that for that. I create my marketing plans through AI. I use Canva, which is, just a regular application tool, but you can automate a month's worth of content if you want to, and it'll trigger like delivery and all of that stuff. It's my stuff. I write it. I'm the one overseeing it. So it's not AI created necessarily. It still has my oversight and my QCing or quality control, but it's helpful because I don't have to. I'm a good writer. I'm a very good writer. That is one of my strengths, I would say. I don't find the time to do it. I just don't have
Right.
as much time as I used to. And so that's super, super helpful in kind of engaging with
That
folks.
makes sense. And isn't it our goal in professional sales, especially working with clients in financial services, that you're going to be so busy that you don't have time for those things? So we need
Exactly.
an answer for that.
Right, right. That's exactly right. And like some people aren't good marketers, some people aren't good writers, some people aren't good at like lots of things. So if there's a solution that can help is an extension of you to make you better at your job, why wouldn't you do it?
Yes.
I mean, one of the things I do, so I created a whole C-suite of agents. So if I'm working, let's say marketing, if I'm working on a marketing campaign, I actually just did one of these a couple weeks ago. So I have a marketing campaign. I don't have a marketing background. I know what I like, but that doesn't mean everybody likes that, right? So
Mhm.
how do I know? it's subjective. So one of my C suites is my CMO. So every piece of content that idea that I come up with or anything that I'm fleshing out, it goes through that agent or that bot that I created. Not only do they look at it and review it and offer feedback, but I make it evaluate itself. So then it will go through and it has, again, the teacher in me, I have a matrix. It's got a rubric, and it's like got to give me the reasons why it graded it this, and then what are your suggestions? And so this whole process, me creating a marketing plan, what would have taken me 2 weeks to do, a couple years ago, takes me about 30 minutes to do a really comprehensive, like 15-page, detailed, granular marketing plan for the year. I mean, that's hard to really, I could not imagine going back to the old way of having to do all of that kind of work by myself and thinking about things that I just don't have the background to think about. I don't think like a marketer. So this has been a game changer. I feel
That's
like I
great.
need to do so much more work now, and I'm thinking so much deeper than I ever did before.
That's such a useful and actionable manifestation of how you're using AI in your practice. And
Yeah,
like you said, you're a self-taught truth seeker. Out of
yeah.
curiosity, you poured yourself into this. You didn't have to go sign up for a class, etc. Let's do this as we wrap up our conversation for today, Holly. I'd love to put you in the chair that your mentor professor was sitting in when he asked you, what is your why? And let's say our audience here is at the other side of the table in your chair. What advice would you give people already in this business or maybe entering into the field of being a retirement plan advisor on building and growing their practice?
So I would say, be open-minded and be flexible. I think this industry is constantly changing, even before AI. I mean, we've seen so many shifts in the industry, over the years. 7, 8 years ago, I've been beating the drum of financial wellness and financial education forever, and nobody was really paying attention to it. And then COVID happened, and everybody's paying attention to it, right? So it's like you have to. Sometimes you're going to be ahead of the curve as far as like where your mindset is or where you think things are going, and learning how to be able to pull yourself back a little bit and kind of reset the conversations is important. But I think the number one thing, and I don't care what industry you're in, but specifically since we're talking about financial services, it is upskilling yourself. Like always, always, always just pushing yourself to learn something new, understanding what's around you. I mean, when we look at the demographics and the shifting demographics in financial services, but just in the industry, it's like the youngest of the baby boomers I think should be fully retired as of today or as of this year. So the new cohort coming in, we've got the millennials and the Gen Zers, Gen Alphas. They're right behind the Gen Zers, right? These guys are going to be coming in the next 7, 8 years. They're complete natives to AI and digital worlds. Like they've only known that. So learning shifting our own mindset to understand like how we've always done things may not be enough. I don't think it's going to be enough going forward. We have to think differently. We have to look at our audience and figure out how can we communicate our services and what we can do to help people in a way that resonates with them, not with what we've always done because we've always done it. To me, that's like the death of anything. Is like you say, well, that's just the way we've always done it. So I'm never good with that.
No, nor should we be. That is a wonderful narrative, Holly. And by the way, I would argue applicable not just to financial services sales, but really anybody who's working with clients and
Yes.
helping anyone with a journey that is important to them, professional or personal. So this is a great place to leave the conversation for now. And I have a feeling we're going to be picking this up again because I could talk for hours with you on these topics and more. So I want to thank you. And we will do this. We'll reschedule and continue. Thank you, Holly Knight, for sharing your insights and your perspectives and your experience. We'll be back soon with another episode of Great to Great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.